Welcome to a plot-driven approach to songwriting. Have you ever wondered what the exact elements of story, plot, and song are? Wish there was a clear step-by-step approach for you to not only identify the story elements of hit songs, but develop your own? Or wished you had a clear system to develop songs that by design connect emotionally better? If so, you are in the right place. In the spirit of transparency and objectivity for the course, I just grabbed the top 3 Billboard Hot 100 songs this month. And I also do a free write to kind of show you the steps when I go through it. So there is some adult language and adult themes that are present in this course. Viewer discretion is advised. The keys of a successful story have been around for a while. Originally defined by Aristotle as conflict, climax, and resolution, the rising and falling actions were later added by Gustav Freytag. Though they gave us a better idea of what's going on, they were still a little vague. I've read a couple of really good books on this subject, but the one that really brought it home for me was the 2004 release, The 7 Basic Plots, Why We Tell Stories by Christopher Booker. In his book, he explains that there's 7 basic plots that nearly every story fits into, as well as the character's motivation and each plot point on that traditional story arc that was defined by Aristotle. The 7 plots that we have to work with are Overcoming the Monster, Rags to Riches, The Quest, Voyage and Return, Comedy, Tragedy, and Rebirth. Before we do any deep dive analysis, let's take a quick look at each plot. It's important to note that because songs are so much shorter than other forms of storytelling, they often just focus on the main emotion of the beginning or the end, just like 2 or 3 acts. Sometimes they simply imply the things that have already happened or are going to happen, and sometimes they use 1 or 2 lines to actually fulfill other sections and make a story more complete. All choices, all artistic decisions. Overcoming the Monster. A monster is threatening the community, and the hero must destroy him. The final battle often occurs in the monster's lair. Any Super Mario fans out there know this story well. It starts with the threat of a monster being introduced. Then the hero is beckoned to confront the monster. The hero journeys to confront and prepares to face the monster, and everything begins well. The hero appears to be outmatched after coming face to face with the monster. In a final confrontation with the monster, everything seems to be hopeless. And then the hero defeats the monster and escapes. He gains something. A treasure, a princess, a kingdom. A good example of this in hip-hop is The Warning by Notorious B.I.G. Rags to Riches. Enter the hero, poor, common, drowning in wretchedness and seemingly miserable. But there is a potential for greatness. Classic underdog story where the hero fulfills his potential and becomes happy, wealthy, important, and successful. A couple of cinematic examples would be Mr. Deeds and Limitless. It starts out when we see the hero in a downtrodden, unhappy, and humble state. He is then called into a wider world, where they enjoy the pleasures of higher status and experience initial successes. They may meet their true love, who is someone that was previously above them. The hero is then separated from their love as everything goes wrong. Discovering their true strength, the hero defeats their rival, proving their worth, and then obtains permanent higher status and wins his true love. Juicy by the Notorious B.I.G. is a good example of this type of song in application. Though it doesn't move linear from beginning to end, it does heavily embrace this concept and randomly grab bits and pieces of these plot points for different lines throughout the track. The Quest, a journey to obtain a great prize in a faraway land. Any of the Indiana Jones movies are great cinematic examples of this plot. The story begins where life is oppressive or intolerable. The hero then receives a supernatural calling or vision that shows that getting something in a faraway land is the key to making things better. Traveling to the goal, the hero has adventures along the way, encounters dangers, temptations, monsters, other quest seekers that have failed, alive or dead, and gains helpers. Within arm's reach of the new goal, a new set of horrible obstacles to overcome are presented to the hero. The hero faces the final set of tests and his toughest fight. The hero then prevails and gets all the swag. The princess, the kingdom, the treasure. A lot of inspirational songs tend to fall into this category. You could take a look at On Top of the World by the Imagine Dragons and see that in the chorus, he's obtained it and already won, but talks about the calling that he got when he was a child. The verses pretty much just talk about the journey and the frustrations with a change of point of view. In the first verse, he talks about how we can do it and the things we'll experience. And in the second verse, he talks about how he did it and how it felt. Voyage Return. The hero travels to a strange world which at first glance seems enchanting. Over time, the hero begins to feel trapped and threatened, pushing him towards escape and their homeland. The Wizard of Oz is a great cinematic example. The story begins when the hero yearns for a new experience due to curiosity, boredom, recklessness, or other reasons. They are then transported to a strange new world suddenly, where the hero explores the world, becomes puzzled and fascinated, but it slowly becomes frustrating, difficult, oppressive, or alarming. The hero's survival is seriously being threatened into an adrenaline-fueled escape and return. The classic song Hotel California by the Eagles is a really good example of this plot structure in songwriting. Comedy. Booker found that you can't apply the same structure to comedies, but does define them in a few ways. 1. A story that ends happily. 2. A story which is satirical or humorous. 3. A drama finding true love, usually young love which ends in marriage. He goes on to loosely define the 3 stages as 1. The story starts in a community, where the relationships between people are living under the shadow of frustration, confusion, or uncertainty. 2. The confusion worsens to a crisis. 3. As the truth is revealed, perceptions are changed, relationships are healed in love and understanding. There's a pretty wide berth for cinematic examples for these, but pretty much any romantic comedy falls into this category. The comedy plot structure is probably the least useful template for us through this lens. It's not that these songs aren't everywhere and they're not prevalent, it's that there's no real clear path to create the emotion. You do have songs like It Was a Good Day by Ice Cube, where the whole point of the song is it's happy and everything's going his way all day. And then you also have satirical songs like My Name Is or The Real Slim Shady by Eminem. All really good songs, but all lacking any real fundamental plot structure. Tragedy. Like a comedy, a tragedy is defined by its ending. The main difference being in a tragedy, the goal's never achieved. The hero doesn't resolve their inner conflict in a positive way. A cinematic example being the movie Scarface. A tragedy begins with the hero being unfulfilled and wanting more. He finds an object of desire or course of action which is usually forbidden. The hero commits to obtaining this goal and things go really well. They slowly begin to go wrong and the hero may resort to unwise and desperate actions that cannot be undone. The forces of opposition close in as the hero loses control of the situation, and a piece of the hero is lost and he is destroyed in some way. It's important to note this is probably the most common plot structure that I come across when analyzing songs, I think for 2 reasons. One being the tragic artist syndrome, where we find a lot of our inspiration and most sincere work out of pain. And 2 being that it embraces a complete love story arc. The first 3 plot points really cover our emotional range for when we're meeting somebody and falling in love, while the last 3 really cover the spectrum of how we feel when we're breaking up. A good contemporary example in songwriting is Rapstar by Polo G, which happens to be #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 as of today, so we'll be taking a deeper dive look at that here in a few minutes. Rebirth, the story of the phoenix, a very strong human emotion. Rebirth is change. Often used to portray dark characters in film, like Golem or Darth Vader. A rebirth story starts with the hero under the shadow of a dark power. At first, things go well as the threat seemingly recedes, but as the threat returns, the hero is imprisoned in a state of living death. Seemingly, the dark power has completely triumphed. The hero is miraculously rescued by someone or something. Montero, Call Me By Your Name by Lil Nas X actually fell into this category, and is #2 on the Billboard Hot 100 as of me writing this, so we'll be taking a deeper look at it in a few minutes. Booker goes on to acknowledge there are 2 other very common storytelling plots, the 8th being a mystery, where a third-party person unrelated directly to the story slowly uncovers one of these predefined plots that we've already discussed. A lot of detective novels are told in this fashion. As it relates to songwriting, I can honestly say I have not found one of these yet and analyzed it, though I think it would be interesting, and I'm sure there's a couple out there. The final basic plot that Booker defines is the rebellion against the one. This plot was summarized on the website howtowriteabook.com as this. Rebellion against the One concerns a hero who rebels against an all-powerful entity that controls the world until he is forced to surrender to that power. The hero is a solitary figure who initially feels that the One is at fault and that he must preserve his independence or refusal to submit. Eventually, he is faced with the One's awesome power and submits, becoming part of the rest of the world again. In some versions, the One is portrayed as benevolent, as in the story of Job, while others as malevolent, as in 1984 or Brazil. A common variation is to have the hero refuse to submit and essentially win against the power of the One. In The Prisoner, the hero eventually earns the right to discover that the One is a twisted version of himself. In The Matrix, Neo's resistance eventually leads to a better world. In The Hunger Games, Katniss's continued rebellion eventually leads to the downfall of both the original tyrant and his potential successor. As songwriters, the idea of the One is definitely important for us to have on our toolbox, but these don't generally follow any traditional plot structures that I've seen. Most protest songs really just embrace the two main ideas of this plot structure, that there is a power and injustice, and we refuse to accept it or comply. In songwriting, I found one of these really boils down to us answering two questions. Number one, what is the thing that we're against, which is our chorus or our tagline? And then number two, what are parts of that system, things that that system has done, or things that that system is doing that make us feel the way we do, which is our verses. To help illustrate this point, I'd like to take a quick look at a few different songs. I'm going to provide links to the lyrics if you'd like to take a minute and read them as we go along. In the Creedence Clearwater song Fortunate Son, John Fogerty uses the chorus to illustrate how he is not part of the patriotic and privileged system by going through the verses and illustrating figures that are part of the system. First, a senator's son, then a millionaire's son, then a military son, and how he is not like any of them. He's not a fortunate son. The Public Enemy song, Can't Trust It, illustrates Chuck D's contempt for the systematic oppression of the African American people, first through original slavery and then through the evolution into a modern corporate world. The tagline, Can't Trust It, very clearly illustrates his contempt and refusal to accept and comply with the system, the One. In the first verse, he acknowledges that there is a systematic issue and drives home the fact that he refuses to comply with it and never will. In the second verse, he goes back in time to original slavery to illustrate the origins. Then in the third verse, he comes back into modern time to illustrate the evolution of these issues and how they're still affecting the community. He then wraps it up by repeating the first verse, reiterating his noncompliance. The final example we're going to look at is Only a Pawn in Their Game by Bob Dylan. This song revolves around the assassination of the American civil rights activist Medgar Evans. This song was written in a verse-refrain style containing 5 stanzas, each one ending with the main idea and phrase, he is only a pawn in their game, illustrating the presence and power of the One. In the first verse, Dylan describes the actual assassination, but chooses to focus on what the killer was going through, ending the verse with, he's not to blame, he's only a pawn in their game. In the second verse, Dylan describes a Southern politician that's capitalizing on the mentality of the poor white class by telling them that they have it better than the blacks and they should be grateful for that. But the politician isn't to blame, he's just a pawn in the game. In the next verse, he elaborates on this idea by pointing out other positions of power that support this mentality to that group of people, and then empowering them to take accountability and protect their way of life. In the fourth verse, he illustrates the extremes that this mentality creates by talking about the KKK and their activities. Dylan then closes the song out by stating, though Medgar Evans died today, the shooter's day will come, and his epitaph will read, only a pawn in their game. By looking at these 3 very different songs, we can see the commonalities between them. All 3 heavily embrace the idea of the One, being that there's a system in place of power. They acknowledge and identify the system either through a personal belief or a general truth in the chorus or tagline. The verses illustrate specific characteristics, events, or effects of that truth. Now that we have a good understanding of each of the basic plots with some examples, let's take a deeper dive into some contemporary works. At the time of writing this course, this is the Billboard Hot 100 Top 3 songs. Number 1, Rapstar by Polo G. Number 2, Montero by Lil Nas X. Number 3, Leave the Door Open by Bruno Mars, Anderson .Paak, and Silkk. As a bonus, I'm going to quickly cover the story arc of Shape of You by Ed Sheeran in the review at the end of the course. Rapstar by Polo G. After reading through this song a couple of times, I came to the conclusion that it's a tragedy. The song opens up with the chorus. Let's take a look at the lyrics now. Copped a BMW, new deposit. I picked up another bag. Like, I'm a count when I'm in it. I hear planes flying, crowd screaming, money counters, chains clanging. I guess that's how it sounds when you're winning. I ain't joking. Do it sound like I'm kidding? I've been making like 2,000 a minute. So high up in the clouds, I was swimming. I'm probably gonna drown when I'm in it. I bet she gonna get loud while I'm in it. And we might have a child when I'm finished. We join Polo G here in the midst of his success. He's already found a prize to chase, and he's achieving it. Things are going really good for him. Though he alludes that they're probably going to go bad with the line, I'm probably going to drown when I'm in it, right now things are going great. He has everything that he wants. This fulfills the temptation and the dream of a tragedy. Rapstar verse 1. I won't love her. After she can't get near me. Only I give a conversation to his Siri. My pants are mirrory. Yes, I'm winning clearly. I'm the chosen one. See my potential so they fear me. Lately I've been praying, God, I wonder, can you hear me? Thinking about the old me, I swear I miss you dearly. Stay down till you come up. I've been sticking to that theory. Every day a battle, I'm exhausted and I'm weary. Make sure I smile in public. When alone my eyes teary. I fought through it all, but that hurt me severely. I've been getting high to hide behind my insecurities. Taking different pills, but I know it ain't gone. Before I dive into a plot analysis of this verse, I think it's important to mention that there's an arrangement decision that was made in this particular song, in this and the second verse. There's 12 lines in both of them, which generally create an uneasy feeling in a listener. These ideas are mentioned in the Elements of Lyricism ebook, so I highly recommend you take some time to read that if you haven't. As a general example for this idea, when you think of blues music and how it's generally sad, well, most blues music is written in 12-bar blues. We can also see one other very important lyrical element at play here that we need to consider as songwriters if we have commercial aspirations. And that's that, at the beginning of a verse, we really need to try to do something that is shocking and attention-getting so that we can retain a listener's ear. Knowing that, we can see that the first 4 lines of this verse were really designed to fulfill that song need. So though they're related to the concept overall, they're really void of any plot progression. Through the next 8 lines, we can see how things are starting to spiral out of control for Polo G. He's praying to God, he's having to fake his happiness when he's out, and he's even resorted to taking drugs to try to hide the pain. These lines deeply embrace the frustration phase of a tragedy, where things begin to go wrong, and the hero may resort to unwise and desperate actions that cannot be undone, like drug abuse. Rapstar verse 2. They say I'm Pakk Rebirth, never put out a weak verse. Homicides when we lurk, I'm a step till my feet hurt. Weren't putting them streets first. White tees turn burgundy t-shirts. Looking for something real, he's stuck in a deep search. Anxiety killing me, I just want to leave Earth. When they ask if I'm okay, it just makes everything seem worse. Trying to explain your feelings sounds like something you rehearsed. Stab me in my back with a clean smirk. Look so deep in your eyes, I can read your thoughts. So please don't talk. I done been through too much, and I don't need another loss. Put that on every war scar for every battle I fought. When we look at the first 4 lines of this verse, we see the first 2 are really heavily focused on that shock and attention-getting aspect, while the second 2 just kind of expand on it a little bit and introduce a very important idea to the rest of the plot of this, and that's the idea of loss. In the rest of the verse, he first takes a little bit of time to reiterate the gravity of the internal conflict that he's going through, how high his anxiety is, and how much he wishes he could just escape from it. He then introduces a recent betrayal and his anger at the situation, concluding that he doesn't want to have to suffer a similar loss that he has in the past. To fulfill the rest of a tragedy, we would need the forces of opposition to close in and the hero lose control of the situation, and a piece of that hero to be lost in some way. In this case, I feel like the betrayal element does a really good job of fulfilling the nightmare, and the simple fact that we cannot do anything about anybody else's decisions. They are completely out of our control. In the last few lines, he really makes it a point to illustrate that he has been through something like this before, and he doesn't want to experience it again. He has already lost something in the past that he'll never get back, which fulfills the final driver need of a tragedy. At this point, it's pretty safe for us to assume that at some point in his life, Act 1 has happened. He was unfulfilled and wanted more. That's what got him to the place where he has it. It's implied by the point in time that we join his story. I'd like to take a second to point out something that you're going to notice more and more the more songs you analyze through this lens. A song's story arc will very often not start at the very beginning. Our choruses generally need to be the biggest, most impactful moment, which often lies somewhere in the middle of a traditional story plot. No matter where the chorus ends up falling in a storyline, the rest of the song and the verses and bridge usually develops in a linear fashion. In this case, by moving into Act 3 and 4 with verses 1 and 2. Or in a reflective song, the chorus may land in Act 3 or 4, and then go back to the earlier acts and drivers to explain how they got there. Number 2 on the Hot 100, Montero, Call Me By Your Name by Lil Nas X. For context, I was reading an interview where Lil Nas X explains his inspiration for this song. The idea of calling me by your name was inspired by a movie about two gay lovers. The idea being that calling somebody by your own name is the most loving thing you can do. He then goes on to explain how this is about a relationship that he has with somebody who is not yet out of the closet, hence they're living in the dark. After reading through this a couple of times, I came to the conclusion that it's a rebirth story. Let's take a look at the lyrics. I caught it bad just today. You hit me with a call to your place. Ain't been out in a while anyway. Was hoping I could catch you throwing smiles in my face. Romantic talking, you don't even have to try. You're cute enough to with me tonight. Looking at the table, all I see is weed and white. Baby, you living the life, but you ain't living right. And this verse really just paints how bad of a crush that Lil Nas has on this dude, who is still not open about his sexuality. Serving the Act 1 needs of a rebirth story, the hero is under the shadow of a dark power. Pre-chorus and chorus. Cocaine and drinking with your friends. You live in the dark, boy, I cannot pretend. I am not fazed, only here to sin. If Eve ain't in your garden, you know that you can. Call me when you want, call me when you need. Call me in the morning, I'll be on the way. Call me when you want, call me when you need. Call me by your name, I'll be on the way like... Oh, call me by your name. Lil Nas X uses the pre-chorus to illustrate the fact that his love interest, even though living a homosexual lifestyle, is in the closet and even has a girlfriend. Lyrically, the chorus illustrates the main emotion of this song, the why he's telling us the story, in very general terms so that it's more relatable to more people. Though I'll never know what it's like to have a thing for a guy that's still in the closet, I can absolutely relate to this main emotion and how it's written in my own personal life. Because choruses generally need to serve our purpose of being catchy and relatable to the most amount of people, they very often don't have a lot of plot detail in them. I like to think of them as a universal emotional synopsis for our songs. Just like the back of a book, it's a 30-second snippet that lets people know if it's for them or not. Looking back to see how we got here, we see that he had a crush on this guy, the guy called him to hang out, and they've been partying. And now he feels this way where you can call me whenever you want. To me, it really feels like things are going in Lil Nas X's direction right now. Because of the trajectory of the story so far, I'm comfortable calling this an emotional fulfillment of Act 2. Things are going well and the threat has seemingly receded. Montero, verse 2. I want to sell what you're buying. I want to feel you're in Hawaii. I want that jet lag from and flying. Shoot a child in your mouth while I'm riding. Oh, why me? A sign of the times every time that I speak. A dime and a nine, it was mine every week. What a time and incline, God was shining on me. Now I can't leave, now I'm acting hella elite. Never want this in my league. I wanna, the ones I envy. These first four lines do a really good job of creating impact for me. He moves from an internal conflict to an external conflict to an internal conflict to an external conflict to really just re-illustrate how bad he's got it for this dude. I find this next line to be really impactful from a plot perspective, where he internalizes the conflict saying, oh, why me? Really illustrates how dark of a situation he's in. The next couple of lines are very reflective, almost looking earlier into the story, an Act 2 idea of when things were going good, where he's talking about a dime and a nine, it was his every week, referring to the 19 weeks that Old Town Road spent at number 1. The way he closes out this reflection with the statement, "Now I can't leave and now I'm acting hella elite," really solidifies that he is in an imprisoned place. Act 3 of a Rebirth plot. The last two lines of this verse really drive home the idea that there's nothing he can do. It's out of his power. He doesn't want the things that he can have. He only wants the things that he has to reach up and chase. These last couple of lines really drive home the concept of an Act 4 rebirth for me. He has acknowledged that there's nothing he can do against this power. Montero Bridge. Tell me you love me in private. Call me by your name. I don't care if you're lying. And what we have here is his complete surrender to the power. He doesn't even care if he's a side piece or if he's being lied to. His complete surrender to the situation provides him a solace. And this solace in acceptance relieves him of the conflict. He's essentially rescued from it. And what we see here is something very similar to Rapstar by Polo G. The chorus falls with the main emotion closer to the middle of the arc, the more important and climactic moments of a story. But the rest of the song develops in a very linear fashion from beginning to end, the way we've been telling stories for thousands of years. Leave the Door Open by Bruno Mars, Anderson .Paak, and Silkk, number 3 on the charts. Verse 1. What you doing? Where you at? Oh, you got plans. Don't say that. I'm sipping wine in a robe. I look too good to be alone. My house clean, my pool warm, just shaved, smooth like a newborn. We should be dancing, romancing in the east wing and the west wing of this mansion. What's happening? After reading through this a few times, I came to the conclusion that the song as a whole falls into the first few movements of a tragedy plot. I'm really glad that we got one of these in the top 3 to take a close look at, because in a creative art form like songwriting and music, there's really no rules, and sometimes it's okay to focus on one or two emotions heavily. It can be very effective. From a plot perspective, what we have lyrically here is the hero being unfulfilled at home and wanting more. He finds an object of desire in this girl that he wants to come over, and then we get kind of like a variation or a mashup of 2 and 3. In the fact that he commits to obtaining her, but it's kind of going wrong in the sense that she has plans. Leave the door open, pre-chorus and chorus. I ain't playing no games. Every word that I say is coming straight from the heart. So if you're trying to lay in these arms, I'm gonna leave the door open. I'm gonna leave the door open, girl. That you feel the way I feel, and you want me like I want you tonight. Baby, tell me that you're coming through. This pre does a really good job of reiterating his internal conflict and how he's going to try to resolve it with one external action in the chorus by leaving the door open. As we've already seen in Montero, choruses often don't contain any real plot progression. What we have here is just a reiteration of things we already know, that he's committed to obtaining his goal and things aren't really going his way. This is the same mashup of Acts 2 and 3 that we've already seen. Verse 2. Oh, you're so sweet, so tight, I won't bite unless you like. If you smoke, I got the haze, and if you're hungry, I got fillets. Oh, baby, don't keep me waiting. There's so much love we could be making. I'm talking kissing, cuddling, rose petals in the bathtub. Girl, let's jump in, it's bubbling. From a plot perspective, what we get here is really more of the same of what we've already been getting. It's him committing to getting that one thing, her to come over. I want to take a second here to really drive home the fact that a plot-driven approach or the fulfillment of a plot's needs are not always necessary in this thing that we do. This type of plot approach, I would say, is about equally common to having real plot weaved into a song, where they give you just enough to make that main idea relevant and then just keep pushing against that main idea. These are some of my favorite songs to really start breaking down, because when they move in this way and hit a wall and stop developing from a plot sense, there is almost always 1 or 2 or 3 other lyrical elements that are being used to really drive home the emotion. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole. That's what the ebook's for, because I feel like it takes away from me being able to paint a very clear, concise picture of how you can use this now. That said, I'm going to quickly brush over a couple of lyrical elements that I see in this song that, in my opinion, really do a great job of keeping our interest and developing that main emotion. Both verses start off with a call and response approach. Oh, you're so sweet, so tight, so tight. They then move into a more traditional lyrical delivery with very unstable both rhyme schemes and line structures. And then the pre and the chorus also utilize the contrast between these lyrical tools. From a lyrical information perspective, in the first verse, he pretty much focuses on him and what he's doing, while in the second verse, he starts to focus on his love interest. This type of small variation of subject matter is extremely common in these types of songs. Writers will often spend one verse talking about you, and then one verse talking about them, or maybe another verse talking about him or her, saying the same thing, basically. Another very common variation that you'll see is they may just move forward in time and reiterate the same points that they've already made. Unsurprisingly, we get pretty much the same thing from a plot perspective out of the bridge. He really just reiterates the gravity of his desire. We've got a couple of things at play here that keep the idea feeling fresh and new moving into the bridge. For the first time, we're receiving the backing vocal up front and the main lyrical idea as a response to that. This is also the first time that we receive this call and response relationship in a three-line setting. To top it off, it ends with the most blunt sexual line of the song, creating impact. Now, I have zero idea if these artists are considering these things when they're writing these songs. I do know that there has been plenty of artists that openly admit to taking this type of approach, not only towards single songs, but for larger story arcs over whole albums. Whether these artists were thinking that way or not, we can heavily see the presence of these elements in these songs. They're the building blocks of a good story, whether we know we're using them or not. Now that we have an understanding of all of the basic plots we have at our disposal, and we've seen how they apply to songs, let's take a look at how to develop these ideas in our own writing.